There's no better feeling than after getting the last of the field seeded and the machinery cleaned and put away for another seeding season. Nothing to do now but sit back and relax until harvest. Oh, if that were only the case. We all know the work is not done, especially when the hail hits. But what do you do when that happens? How do you make your hail claim experience the very best it can be? This video will help you to determine what stage your crop is at and what damage estimation it is. This will help you determine the right time for an adjuster to assess the damage, whether that's immediately or to wait for the damage to fully emerge. The life cycle of a canola plant from germination to seed production takes about 3.5 months, depending on temperature, moisture, sunlight, and soil fertility. There are 9 stages to canola growth, but in our area, we do not consider stage 2 or stage 4 as they are not applicable to the spring canola varieties grown in Canada. The first stage is germination, followed by stage 1, leaf development. This first picture shows 2 cotyledon leaves of the canola plant emerging from the soil. These are not true leaves. The first true leaf on the canola plant is now emerging between the cotyledon leaves. 2 true leaves on the canola plant. Rapid leaf production occurs at this time. And now 4 true leaves on the canola plant. Leaves emerge from the center of the plant. During the leaf stage, the leaves are simply counted to determine the stage. We'll now look at some damaged canola leaves, and Craig will determine what stage these plants were at before the hail hit.
And canola this size, we go by how many leaves it has.
Okay.
So, I mean, as far as staging, it's 2 leaf, 4 leaf, 6 leaf. Then after it gets to the 6 leaf, it starts to develop the rosette and come up. I mean, this is growing since the storm. Why this plant's so good, I don't know, but that's probably all new. And you can see what's been cut off, all right. You know, we determine how many leaves they have, how much defoliation is in those leaves, and the same thing, it goes into a chart.
Okay. So
At this early stage, all it pays is leaves. As it gets bigger, then we start paying leaves and branches. Then as the year progresses, it's branches and pods.
So what stage would this be at then?
The time of the storm, it was in the 4 to 6 leaf.
Okay.
By the looks of it. 1, 2, you know. Yeah. Yeah, kind of have to put the plant back together, right?
Right. Yeah. The next stage is stage 3, stem elongation. The next picture shows stage that occurs immediately prior to bolting. The green flower head is enclosed by the stage. And next, the stem elongation, or the bolt, begins, and the canola plants rapidly grow taller. The flower bud will be raised above the youngest leaves on the plant. This is the true main stem on a canola plant. Stage 5 is inflorescence emergence. Stage 6 is flowering. And here we're going to look at a series of pictures that can show from a distance roughly what stage a canola field is at. This picture shows 2 days after the first flower. Flowering begins as the first yellow flower opens. The main stem continues to elongate, and there can be up to 10 flowers present on the main stem under normal conditions. And this is 4 days after the first flower. At 20% bloom, more flowers continue to open and branching is starting to occur. 6 days after the first flower. At 30% bloom, the flowers are rapidly developing on the main stem. 8 days after the first flower. At 40% bloom, the canola field should be a bright yellow in appearance. 10 days after the first flower. This is full flower, and when 50% of the flowers on the main stem are open. There will be greater than 20 flowers open on the main stem under normal conditions. 12 days after the first flower. Pods are rapidly developing at this stage, and the lower portions of the stem and the lowermost pods will be developing water kernels. Stage 7. Development of seeds. This is 16 days after the first flower. At this stage, the flowers at the bottom of the stems will be developing seeds and will be fully elongated. There will be numerous pods on the plant. The flowers have declined to the point where a few flowers will be present at the top of the stem. The field will have an overall green appearance. Canola will flower from 20 to 25 days as an average from start to finish, although under normal growing conditions, these late flowers will not develop any viable pods. Stage 8 is ripening, and stage 9 is senescence, or the harvested product. In the development of seed and ripening stages, the canola plant has completed flowering and now has developed pods on the entire plant. In the water stage, the seed is at the stage called water ripe and is somewhat translucent and resembled a water-filled balloon. The seed's embryo now begins development and grows rapidly within the seed coat to fill the space previously occupied by fluid, and the seed weight will increase. The seed color will change. Seeds in all ponds on a plant reach physiological maturity and complete filling at about 40% moisture. Seeds slowly turn from green to light yellow or reddish brown to brown, depending on the weather and the variety. This curing process starts from the bottom of the main stem. Seed color change will then progress up the main stem as moisture content is reduced. When all seeds in the pod have matured, the plant dies. However, canola is typically harvested while the lower stem is still green. Mature pods are split easily along the center membrane, and some seeds can be lost by shattering. Average seed moisture of 8 to 10% with no green seed visible is the ideal moisture content for harvest. There are several aspects to canola damage to consider: stand loss, defoliation, branch loss, and pod loss. The earliest hail damage to the canola plant is when seedlings, the stage where the plant consists of a root, hypocotyl, and 2 cotyledon leaves, can be killed by hail, breaking the hypocotyl, or by tearing off both cotyledons, thereby thinning the stand and reducing the crop yield. Plants with true leaves are unlikely to be killed. If plants are evenly distributed, the stand can be severely reduced without much yield loss. This is because the remaining plants branch more and produce more pods and seeds because they have less competition for light, moisture, and nutrients. In this next clip, Craig will talk to us about stand loss.
That plant is green but it really has no new growth. See, as far as this storm, all these little marks, those are hailstones.
So they were pretty big.
Yeah.
So how do you count the stand loss? Like, how do you count that?
We'd have to take so many feet and determine the percent that's gone. Then that actually goes into a chart too, because based on the time of year, because what it, so much, a certain amount of stand loss, the plants make up for it.
As Craig mentioned, plant stand loss is counted as a loss as well. In order to get an idea of what the plant stand loss is, you'll need to look at a square area that's about 3 feet by 3 feet and count and record the number of plants that were in the original stand, and then the plants that are still in the surviving stand, including plants that have germinated after the storm. Locate the number of plants in the original stand and in the surviving stand on Table 3. The point the two lines intersect will give you the percentage of seed loss. So using this chart, if there were 60 plants in the original stand and only 8 remain after the storm, you have suffered a 29% yield loss due to the vegetative plant cutoff. Defoliation is another type of canola loss. Plants that have formed true leaves will likely survive, but their vigor will be diminished by defoliation caused by hail. The greatest amount of yield loss occurs just prior to bolting, where 100% of defoliation would give you a 25% payable loss. The amount of defoliation at the different plant development stages relates to the amount of seed loss, which is a payable loss, as shown on page 2 of this chart, which is available for download. For example, if there is a 75% defoliation on a plant in the 5-leaf stage, there is a 16% loss. As shown here in the video, The plant is likely recovering and developing more leaves, so only assess the leaves that were present during the storm. Look for any bruised or torn leaves. The average number of leaves assessed will also be the stage entered for the time of the storm. If the plants have progressed to the branching stage, refer to the picture guide to assist in staging those plants. Pick 10 representative plants and visually assess the extent of leaf loss as a percentage of the total leaf area. Assess each leaf individually for the amount of defoliation and then add them together and divide by that number of leaves. Repeat this for each of the plants and then add them together, then divide by the number of plants to determine the amount of defoliation for that count. Adjusting branch loss at the flowering stage is the most difficult aspect for assessing damage in canola. The earlier the damage, the more potential the plant has to repair and compensate for that damage. A key point to remember is that the canola plant can recover from damage and produce a significant yield from hangers and bruised stems, which may be damaged in the flowering stages of growth. This chart will help you to determine the branch loss allowance, and it's available for download. Similar to defoliation, first determine the stage of the crop at the time of the storm using the staging guide. Then choose 10 representative plants. Determine the amount of defoliation and then move on to count and record the total number of branches present before the storm. This count would include branches that are healthy, lost, hangers, or missing tips. Determine the amount of branch loss by assessing a percentage of each branch loss and then add those amounts together and divide by the total number of branches assessed. These charts and their instructions will be available for download. The total loss payable will be determined by subtracting the defoliation allowance from the entire plant matter and then adding the portion of the total branch loss payable from what is left of the plant. Let's look at this example. Branch loss is payable on the plant after defoliation is assessed because we'll need to know what number to subtract from the branch loss. We'll be using the chart mentioned previously to determine the amount of loss at each stage. The crop stage at the time of this storm was 5 days after the first flower. The defoliation amount is 45% and the branch loss is 50%. Defoliation at 45% gives you a 7% payable loss. Then we subtract that 7% from the entire branch matter. So that's 100 minus 7% gives you a factor of 0.93. The branch loss at 50% shows a branch loss allowance of 19 multiplied by the factor of 0.93, which gives you an 18% payable loss. We add those two payable losses together, the 18% and the 7%, to give you a total loss of 25%. To adjust pod loss, use 10 representative plants. Count and record the total number of pods present before the storm. This count would include pods that are missing or show losses from splitting or bruising. Calculate and record the percentage seed loss based on the percentage of those pods lost. To adjust seed loss to bruised pod, use 10 representative pods. Count and record the number of seeds in the pod and the numbers lost due to bruising. Bruised seeds are of normal size, but they are brown and shriveled in appearance. They can be distinguished from naturally aborted seeds as they occur only under the bruised area of the pods and are of normal size. They are readily identifiable a few days after the storm. Adjusting in the podding stage in a standing swath. Isolate 5 plants and carefully examine each branch off the plant. Determine losses associated with pod loss, seed loss due to bruising, hangers, and lost stems or branches. Divide pods missing by the total number of pods per plant. When loss percentage is determined for each of the 5 plants, calculate the average loss percentage. Here is a typical canola swath. If shattered pods are evidenced from side to side, then it's likely that the damage profile for the swath may be 30 to 35%. In a driving, hard hailstorm, the damage may go deeper into the swath. But if only the top of the swath is damaged, then perhaps the damage profile for the swath is 20 to 25%. Adjusting in potted stage in the swath. First, determine if there has been wind damage by looking for lifted or badly scattered swaths, as wind damage is an insured peril under the production insurance contract and should not be included in the hail adjustment. Profile the percent of the swath damaged by hail. In this example, Only the top quarter of the swath was damaged by hail, giving it a 25% profile. Next, carefully extract and clip the branches from 5 plants in the damaged profile of the swath. The pod loss in this example is 50%. Calculate the loss payable. Using the 0.25 factor for the profile damage multiplied by the 0.50 factor for the pod loss will give you a 13% hail damage. Now that you can confidently stage and do a primary assessment on your crop, the next step is to report your claim. Please take a moment to watch the step-by-step guide on how to file your claim online using Connect. For more information on our hail claim or any other procedure, please visit our external website at www.afsc.ca or contact your local branch. Also, be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for additional updates, announcements, and our connection to the community. Thanks for watching.